Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So today I got a very fun and very exciting episode for you guys this evening because we're going to be looking at the final update to Project Omed, which is a fork of RPCS3 that's going to allow you to emulate the Tekken games on the Namco system 257 and 259. And if you're not aware, those are PlayStation 3 derivative arcade boards. Namco was the only one really to use PlayStation 3 in arcades to my knowledge, and they would release the arcade versions in cabinets on PlayStation 3 hardware. And while it is very similar to home console hardware for PlayStation 3, there are enough changes that it needs to be forked off the actual emulation to be able to run. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, got a Patreon link down below as well. And if you're wondering, yes, there are differences between the arcade versions of Tekken 6 as well as the home console port. So this is something that definitely is great from a preservation standpoint because these boards are a little bit fiddly to set up at home, and honestly not many people collect them because the console versions do exist. But this is running off a fork of RPCS3, and it's basically been buttoned up to run these arcade games. I don't believe every single arcade game is going to run in this emulation. It's really focused towards Tekken as well as Blood Retribution and Tag 2, but that is awesome to see because these are important games, and being able to play them at home because you don't see them at arcades very often anymore is something from a preservation standpoint you just absolutely love to take a look at. And the nice thing is, outside of a couple of compiling issues where you'll see there is a tiny bit of pop-in on some of the character model, I really can't find anything to fault on the emulation side of Project Omed. Now do be aware it's going to be dependent upon your system specifications. I'm using an i9-12900K as well as a 3080 Ti on my system, but my moderator, the Cool Pup, captured some of the footage for this from my Discord, and he has a lesser system and he's still getting really good performance. So as long as you don't bring a potato to the party, you should be fine on something like this. But if you have the AVX 512 instruction set enabled or capable on your CPU, you will definitely see better performance because RPCS3 utilizes that if you can bring it to the party. But honestly, Tekken 6 is such a fun game, and seeing it run here via emulation on the arcade side of things is incredible because I always love doing videos on improvements on the emulation side. And the last time I think I even tried to play around with this, it was running at half the speed and definitely had a lot of graphical corruption. Now today, it really just looks exactly like it should if you were playing the actual arcade hardware, and I'm pretty sure most of you probably didn't realize that the PlayStation 3 was actually utilized as far as arcade hardware is concerned, and that was very common for developers, including Namco, to do that. You see boards on PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 3, but I've never heard of 4 or 5 ever ending up in arcades. It seems like now everything is just a PC in a box. But there is something fun and charming about PlayStation 3 arcade hardware. If you do collect it, it is massive, it's a gigantic box, and it can be a pain to set up, but doing something like RPCS3 emulation with that PlayStation 3 arcade hardware is going to be a lot less wires and the same amount of fun, and that's definitely why these things are important. And there are other games on PlayStation 3 based arcade hardware that hopefully will emulate in the future as well, because it seems like, as far as my research shows, only Namco used the PlayStation 3 for arcade boards. Maybe there's some exotic board out there I'm not aware of in tests, but honestly, it just seems like Namco was the company that went for it before they moved over to PCs in a box like everybody else. So it's not as maybe exciting of hardware as some of the bespoke 3D hardware of the late 90s and early 2000s, but it is still awesome in its own right. And if we take a look at this area here, every single bit of graphical effect is encoded in. Everything looks good. There really isn't any issues that I can spot whatsoever. If you see anything that doesn't look good to you, leave me a comment down below and tell me where it is. But otherwise, this is just extremely accurate emulation on the arcade fork, and I'm not 100% aware of exactly all of the different calls to the hardware that the arcade version pivots up compared to something like the home console, but I can tell you all of the encryption and all of the inputs are completely different than you'd see at home, and that is always something fun to have as well. And of course, it is Tekken 6 as well as Blood Retribution and Tag 2, so that is something you know you're getting good games as well. And of course, it's not just the performance and the graphics we need to worry about in emulation, it's also the sound. So go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, get an earful, and tell me if it sounds like you would expect Tekken 6 to, because honestly to me, it sounds pretty damn accurate.
Round 1. Fight. You win. Round 2. Fight.
Sounds good to my ear, but let me know what you think. But now we're moving over to Tekken Tag 2 Unlimited, and this is running on the Namco 359 arcade hardware. And honestly, trying to get information about what the difference is between 357 and 359 is near impossible out there. I'd have to have both in front of me and probably tear them down because it is still PlayStation 3 based hardware. So maybe Namco changed up a little bit of the encryption techniques, or maybe an I/O board or something in there, because I do not believe that it's doing anything as far as the fundamental hardware on the APU side or extra RAM to make it any different than Namco 357. But it is another game that Project Omed's fork is going to be running extremely well, from the cutscenes all the way through to the gameplay. But tell me down below, do you prefer mainline Tekken, or do you prefer Tag? Tekken 6 or Tekken Tag 2? Which one would you take? In my opinion, I've always enjoyed the Tekken Tag sub-franchise more than I have the original Tekken, but I think both are absolutely incredible games. I just love the Tag battle action and the overall techniques you're going to find in something like Tag 2. But as we jump into the gameplay, you're going to see the same great emulation that we saw in Tekken 6 on the Namco 357. Every once in a while, it's going to need to compile shaders, so your first or second run through the game, you may have to deal with that, but once they are compiled, you'll be totally fine. And if you guys want a tutorial on how to set up this fork to emulate these games, leave me a comment down below. I feel like this is going to be a little niche, and most people that want to do it probably already know how. I'm just here delivering the news of how good this emulation has gotten, but if you do want to see that, maybe I will make it for you. And there's something about, again, like I said, tagging in and having those team attacks that really just make Tag 2 feel like a little bit more fast-paced and exciting of a game. The only thing I've noticed in Tag 2 that I didn't see at all in Tekken 6 is you'll see here, as the round loads in, you end up just basically having a little bit of lag there. And again, maybe that's just a compilation issue, but I tried it after I pre-compiled the shaders, and I did have those problems where every once in a while, some of the assets would take a couple frames to load in like you just saw there. So it might just be something that it's not loading at the exact proper speed compared to real hardware, or it may just be a one-off issue I experienced when I was taking a look in my system. But these are really tiny problems, and I'm sure they can get fixed up in the future. But honestly, this is just an absolute win for emulation and preservation, because again, this hardware, not many people are going to want to collect it. I don't even have a Namco 357 in my collection, because it is one of those things. I don't really love arcade hardware based on consoles past like the Dreamcast and Naomi era. It just really isn't where my heart lies. And I know a lot of people do like to collect this hardware, and for them that's awesome, but for the people in between that want to play the arcade versions of these games with their changes, but they don't want to go out and spend $500, $600 on an arcade board for it, this is going to be an absolutely awesome thing. And you'll see again just a little tiny bit of pop in there before you actually get into the match. But it's one of those things, it's just awesome to see this working. I know they say this is their final update, but I'm sure something else bug fix will come around. But now it's time for the soundtrack sample of Tekken Tag 2. Go ahead and listen to the Namco 359 hardware and tell me if you hear anything that doesn't sound accurate to you.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Honestly, sounds good to my ear, and there's nothing in there that makes me think it's doing anything other than real hardware would. But if you're a massive Tekken Tag 2 fan, leave me a comment down below and you tell me. But I love the developers and emulation coders out there made a fork just for the Tekken games, because this is the RPCS3 fork just for Tekken and Blood Retribution as well as Tag 2, and it just shows a dedication to keeping these games alive in the public consciousness, so that way maybe even 10-15 years later down the line from here, if people want to play the arcade version of the Tekken games on the 357 and 359 hardware, they're going to be able to do that, and that is just a win in my book. But you tell me what you think. Is this sort of emulation of games that already exist on consoles is worth it for you, or you just want to go play the console version of the game. And I love those pigs in the background just flying around as the fight goes on. And obviously we move back to the original Tekken 6 footage here, but you'll see when the shaders aren't compiling, everything is smooth, everything is fluid, all the inputs just work. It's everything you want out of something like arcade emulation at home, and that is why it's great. Definitely going to be the type of game that's going to play better if you bring an arcade stick along for the ride, but it will be great on controllers as well. But definitely check this one out. I will leave a link in the description below to where you can find the fork. You'll have to find the game files yourself, but you're smart and I'm sure you'll figure that out. But go ahead and give this one a shot. It's a ton of fun and really shows the dedication out there to trying to keep all of these arcade releases alive. And if you're not aware, the PlayStation 3 did have a decent amount of arcade games. I will leave a link in the description below as well to System 16, where you can take a look at photographs of the actual arcade boards and see all of the games that ran on them. I just feel bad for those poor pigs in the background getting absolutely blasted out of the way while a fight takes place. But this is awesome, absolutely a reason to celebrate, and definitely check it out. But we are done. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.